I personally, this is me personally, I love your story, right? Like where you started as a hygienist. So you started in the chair and you went on to help run an amazing organization, a dental organization. Then you pivoted to a tech company, and then you pivoted again to an entrepreneur slash kind of like everything. And
Mhm.
to me, it's just an amazing story, right? Like I see people trying to work through that, and to see you at the end of it. And I know you're not the end of your story, but just to know that process, I just think it's super helpful to people, and I just enjoy it. So would you mind walking us through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated hygiene school in 2007 from San Juan College in New Mexico and did clinical work for 8 years, 9 years. And I really loved taking care of my patients, but the repetition was a little bit much for me. My personality doesn't fit real well in that. I also really struggled because sometimes I felt like there was a ceiling that it was like, I don't become like RDH2 or anything like that. And I think that's one of the things I'd like to try to solve in dentistry is that we attract really ambitious people, but sometimes there's not a great career ladder within clinical, and I'd love to see that change. But anyway, so I was a clinical dental hygienist. I started exploring other options. I was actually in education. So I taught at the school that I graduated from, and that was a lot of fun. I would take the senior students on different rotations, so like special needs clinics or the nursing home or different places like that. Then started just doing some speaking and some writing and talked a lot about treating patients with autism and dentistry just because of my son.
Yep.
And then kind of the first really big pivot was starting to do some consulting and coaching with a company in Washington. So I was on a 5 function team, and we would pull data from the practices and work with the dentist and understand what their goals were, and then really help chart a path and hold them accountable to that. So that was a really good
Wait,
experience. Yeah, go ahead.
quick question. How did you move that? Like that was a quick move, right? So it's like you're in the chair and then now you're consulting. How did that happen? Like how did you, and I'm really interested in what you said. You said you weren't a personality fit for hygiene. So how did you come to that conclusion of like, hey, is it I'm unhappy, or what is it? And then how did you make that pivot to consulting?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, it was like I remember very vividly, I hadn't even been out a full year and I'd been working full time. And I remember it was at the end of the day and I'd cleaned up and I kind of just like stood and like stared around my operatory and I asked myself the question, is this it? Like my student loans weren't even paid off. And it was like, I knew it at the top of the hour. I was getting a new patient back at 5 after. We were doing health history, we were doing blood pressure, we're doing like, and my day was just charted for me. And so I just, I kind of struggled with that, and didn't love that. So then I did start exploring other options. So I was actually really involved with like the ADHA or the NMDHA. So I was actually the president of the New Mexico Dental Hygienists Association just like a year and a half out of school.
Wow.
And so understanding like the governance of hygiene, dental hygiene, and some of the political landscape. And so that's where I also got some experience in leadership and working with dentists. And one of the things I was probably really set me up for what I did in working with dentists is at that time, the Hygienist Association and the Dentist Association kind of hated each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we would sit in a room together, it was like the hygienists were on one side of the table, the dentists were on the other, and they like you could feel the tension. And they would always go to legislative session with opposing bills for expanding the scope of hygiene practice or whatever. And
Wow.
so like the politicians kind of got sick of it and were like, you guys have got to come together. So we created a
when
liaison.
when a politician is telling you you guys need to clean up your relationships and you're not working together well, you guys need to learn to play together better, that's a problem.
It is a problem. So we ended up creating a liaison committee with the Dentist Association, the Hygiene Association, and my team. And it was like it started out really rocky, but we went that year for the first time ever with legislation together, which was awesome. So I think I had some early on situations that kind of set me up for how is it best to communicate in difficult situations? How can we come together when we feel like we're on separate, sides of an issue? So anyway, actually how I got just jumped, from one to the other with education and the political stuff to the consulting is we moved from New Mexico to the Pacific Northwest. So we moved to Portland, Oregon. My brother lived there. We were looking for a place that was just bigger and had more resources, especially for kids with special needs. But we still had family there so we could have support because he
Hmm.
does have special needs. So we moved there, and I actually, it was kind of one of those like fate things where it was before we were in New Mexico. We knew we were moving. We didn't know how we were going to do it. Like my husband was quitting his job of 10 years. We were just taking this leap of faith because we felt like it was the right thing for our family and for our son. And so I was up at 5 in the morning. I was picking my sister-in-law up to go to the gym. And I had this very distinct thought, look at the job boards. And I was like, that's weird. It's 5 a.m. So I picked up my phone while I was waiting for her. I opened up Indeed and I saw this position for Director of Professional Development for a dental consulting company. And as I read through it, I was like, oh my gosh, this has got to be so perfect. This is made for me. So I started to apply and I got this email that said, oh, only, we have a lot of applicants and only the best candidates will even like hear from anybody. Well, I was like, yeah, that's not good enough. So I started researching the company online and I started connecting with the team members on LinkedIn. And I was like, maybe if like they see my name or they're talking about it, maybe it'll start to be familiar. And then I just started doing research on the company and on the CEO, and I found all these YouTube videos and whatever. And I just sent him a private message. It was like, hey, I want you to know, like, I'm moving, I'm a hygienist, I've just come across your stuff. I love what you're doing. I think it's incredible. I've just applied for a position. And immediately I got a reply back that was like, I'm connecting you with my VP of operations. Thank you so much for reaching out. So, get creative when you're trying to connect with people.
So
So
break
he,
all the rules, right? When they're
right?
like, don't
Yeah,
apply, don't reach out to the main person, don't do that. Just skip all that. Just go straight,
yeah.
do your thing. That's awesome.
But I
I
did
love
it
it.
like I researched his company. I knew about him. I knew what his message was. I really was impressed by it. So he showed up to my first interview, which I found out later was like a really big deal. So anyway, that's how I got that job and, worked there. And it was a really good learning experience. That's where I actually met Eric and Clifton of Carolina's Dentist.
Got it.
So they were clients of mine and I was coaching them and I just really connected with them. The CEO pulled me aside and said, I'm going to give you this new client. They're not happy. Do whatever you can to make them happy. And I said, okay. So I started attending their leadership meeting weekly, virtually, did that for almost a year. Eric called me one day and said, nobody's ever been able to hold us accountable like you can. We need you as part of our company. What would it take for you to come to North Carolina? So we moved from Washington State to North Carolina, moved the whole family across the country. I had to go first for a couple of months without my family. And so that was really hard, but,
I bet.
you know, it paid off in the long run. And thankfully my family's just super supportive. And so I was director of hygiene, I was director of people, I was director of operations, and then I was the integrator the last bit or COO before I exited after our transition.
Got it. And so you were dealing with messy politicians, and you fixed that. You cleaned that up as probably best as you could, right? And then you got up to Oregon, and you went in and you had a messy situation again. It sounds like, and I know this about you personally. In full disclosure, I work with Josey. Josey helps me with my business. So, and I'm messy. It's super messy. So it sounds like you're cleaning messes, right? And you're fixing things to the point where people are like, "Wow, this was a disaster." And now you're fixing it. So you leave Carolina's Dentist and you fixed it, right? You guys did amazing what you guys were able to do there. The de novos, and a lot of people know that. And then what happened after that? What was your next phase from there?
Yeah, so actually, we as at CD, we were customers of Dental Intel, and we used Dental Intel. We were operating on EOS or Entrepreneurial Operating System. Data is a big part of that. We started using Dental Intel in like March of 2017. So they were still also a new company. And we just really figured out how to make it work for us. Our team was really engaged. Our team loved it. So one day I got a call from Scott Livingston and he said, hey, we have changed internally how we operate based on what we've learned from you guys as customers. Our CEO, Weston, would really like to come out and meet you and see what you guys are doing. And I said, absolutely, we love visitors. And so I got to decide, where Weston was, what he was doing. So I wanted him to attend our level 10 meeting, or our leadership meeting that we have once a week. So he came and he watched all of that. And afterwards he said, I've never seen anything like that. You have to come work for me. And I said, well, actually, I'm really happy. I love what I do. I love this company, but thanks so much for thinking of me. And then for 2 more years, he continued to hey, really want you to work for Dental Intel. Would love to bring you on. And so with the transaction of CD, my position was changing. But more than that, Ethan was 16 years old. We only have a couple of years left of school. North Carolina was not serving him. The entire reason we moved around the country was primarily for him. We had the opportunity for a special school potentially for Ethan that I could see from Dental Intel. And so left.
So everything kind of lined up to really help your son and help your family.
Yeah, it was absolutely, that was the primary driver in me exiting from Carolina's dentist, was just to provide for Ethan. It's really, really hard to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Especially when they were getting really great support from Lightwave and financial backing, that they have just grown exponentially since then, and done some really amazing things. So anyway, we came out here, worked for Dental Intel, got to do lots of, great things. I was here primarily to build an educational program for office managers. And you know what? Things changed over time a little bit as we were working through things. The pandemic hit, and it was like everybody, I'm sure just, I know I felt it, but I know other people were feeling it too, this obligation to help.
Yeah.
And this obligation to do whatever I could. And I had spoken at DEO the fall before. I talked about being an integrator. I talked about EOS. I'd done several workshops on EOS. So when quarantine happened and everybody was shut down, I started to have dentists reach out to me that said, I know you know EOS. I know you know how to run a dental group. I'm scared. I'm worried. I have time. I don't know how we're going to scale this business. I don't know how we're going to survive. Would you implement EOS with us? So I took on a couple of clients, and then it was just more of that soul searching, what am I meant to do? Where is my greatest impact? And felt that it was in taking that leap of faith to provide services directly to dental groups. So Eric and I also started working on joyFULL People.
Which just really quickly, I work with several of your clients, and you've done an amazing job with all the people that I've worked with. You've helped them not only grow, but help them numerically, but you've helped them grow business wise too. So you just have an amazing gift again of coming in and solving those kind of things. So I don't want to just brush over that. That's a big part of you and what you do when you step onto the scene. So I think that's huge. So sorry to break up the pattern there. So you're doing EOS, and then you start talking to Eric, and what happens from there?
So Eric and I worked really, really well together at CD. And so we actually started putting together some content when COVID hit, because we'd had the experience of being shut down by a hurricane and being cash poor and a growing business and all of these things. And so we started just putting some content together around helping people maybe change their mindset about COVID and about their business, and some tips and tricks and things to prepare for and look at your operations and stuff. And we kind of had this moment that it was kind of funny that we'd never really dawned on us before. What everybody would always come to us about was people. And it was culture. And it was how do I have a high performance culture, but one that's also healthy? So we started putting together and recognizing how much, intellectual property, I guess, we had around it, and the systems that we had built to really take something that feels so touchy-feely or amorphous or whatever, that you can't quite put your finger on it, and systemize some things that when you operate in these systems, the culture turns out to be really, really strong and really healthy with happy people, and you get more out of them. And they feel better about coming to work, and they're excited to come to work. So we started building joyFULL People. So now we have 2 branches, right? We've got Traction for Dental, which is EOS implementation. We have joyFULL People. So the goal was always that we anticipated that joyful people would actually be kind of like the long-term big picture program that we really focused on. And EOS was something we all loved and cared about, and we'd operated in for 5 years. So we knew it. We knew how to apply it to a group of hygienists, to the front office team, how to teach it to other associates, which tools mattered most. So that just grew very, very quickly. My practice as an EOS implementer, I grew in about 6 months, what it takes many people about 2 years to build.
It's crazy.
I think that speaks more to actually the need for it in dentistry versus like it's a Josey thing. It's just that people need it. And they were so glad to have somebody with a dental background who also knew the operating system and could teach them how to use that. So at the end of the year, beginning of the year, we were very, very clear about what our vision was for this year. It was to create a group practice of implementers with a dental background who were trained in EOS to support growing dental practices / groups. So that was all very, very clear. The other thing that we looked at is, as you look at what we call the accountability chart in dentistry, you've got finance, operations, marketing, culture, people, HR. When dental groups are growing, sometimes they get stuck, and before they can really bring in that person full time, they really kind of hobble along. So we looked at that and realized we could provide fractional services, whether through strategic partnerships like SMC or people internally like fractional integrators to support growing dental groups. So that was all like clear and ready to go. And then we had our annual session. It was 2 days. Day 1 was great. We were ready to go into day number 2, completely planned, ready to go with our 1-year plan. And we found out that night EOS Worldwide was moving to a franchise agreement. So we found out, we saw the news about 9 p.m. We were up until 1 a.m. trying to sort through it and figure out what that meant for us. And it was things were not clear around branding, things were not clear around could you have a firm or a group practice, and any like ancillary or additional type services. So completely understand why EOS had to do it. But we got the franchise agreement in March. And then for 90 days, we read that 164-page document almost every day. We had lots of people look at it. We looked at various different sides of the issue. And it was like, it was so hard because EOS is ingrained in us and who we are and what we do, and we believe in the system. And then we were actually sitting at an EOS Worldwide conference. Gino Wickman is on stage. Gino Wickman is talking, and he's giving his like, here's my advice to live a happy, healthy life, right? And the first one is make your decisions as 10-year decisions. And so if you're stuck trying to figure something out, you need to look out 10 years and you need to make that based on 10 years. And we were like, well, okay. If that's the case, we do know eventually we'd like to create a dental specific operating system. We do know that we would like to take the beautiful things that we love about EOS, like having a clear vision, having good values, what's a good meeting cadence. But so many people came to me because they wanted like, how did you, like, they want to know the dental stuff that I built out. They want to know like, you know, how should I measure my hygiene department, or when should I centralize?
Which has nothing to do with EOS, right? Like that's a total separate thing.
Right. And so, and we'd also had all of this brand confusion with what is Joyful People, what is EOS? A lot of people still don't even realize it. Like, what is the difference? And that's because we had to keep them very separate because we were abiding by EOS intellectual property law. I was always very, very careful and mindful and followed their system to provide a pure experience, right? And so like if I brought in things that I had built previously for the dental group, it was always like, hey, outside of the session, I can share this with you. Or, you know, it was almost like I would wait until people were in so much pain with their people that I'd say, well, I have Joyful People, rather than just integrating it from the beginning when I knew they needed it, because I was sticking to what was appropriate, calling myself an EOS implementer. So I had some really great conversations with close, trusted advisors and clients, you being one of them, and just said, hey, you know, I'm faced with this situation. If there's a fork in the road and you get either more EOS purity from me, or you get joyful people and more of my dental specific stuff, and it's more integrated in, what's more valuable to you? And they said, we will take joyful people and dental all day long.
Yep.
So we decided to not sign the franchise agreement, which was a really big decision. I'd become very like integrated in the EOS community. It was like, it was emotional for me because
It
I had,
wasn't something you wanted to do, right? Like this is something that was the situation. It
yeah,
was a hard decision.
yes, it was. And I fell in love with just EOS worldwide and the people in the community. And it was really hard for me because it become part of my identity, I guess. Just like it was hard to not be an integrator anymore. It was hard to, not do this. So we decided not to do that. And we have decided to partner with an incredible organization and combine our resources. And we're going to build the dental operating system. And so that's what
That
the
is
future is.
that is so cool. That is like I obviously we never want people to go through hard things or have to make hard decisions, but sometimes those hard things bring the most beautiful things, right? And I know, like, I don't know how much you can go into all of it, but I know kind of the direction that you're going, and it's so exciting and it's so needed. People are hungry for this, to your point. And yes, there are some system things, and yes, there are some different parts of it that I know that you guys are building out, but it's just needed. Like someone needs to systematize it. So I'm excited for you guys, and I can't wait to see how that all unfolds. So we'll probably leave that as a cliffhanger for next time.